Hi, welcome to the IdeaMastery Podcast. Excited to have Charity, our inaugural guest, with us here today. Charity is a nurse turned life coach. She is the driving force behind Midlife Renewal, a transformative program focusing on gaining clarity, decluttering, and hyper prioritizing essentials for a holistic, minimalist lifestyle. So, welcome, Charity. So glad to have you here with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yay! Thank you for being my first guest.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Um, Miss Charity, can you tell us about midlife renewal?
So I've been a bedside nurse for quite a while, for about 10 years, or actually longer than 10 years. And in the course of that work, just working with, sick and the sick and dying at the end of their lives, I've realized, I noticed that it seemed to me that there was a lot of putting off of what is important. It's like almost like they were blindsided, or a lot of people are kind of blindsided by the most important, or like the runway running out, on life. And uh, and so, like a lot of the things that are important in a human life, it seemed like it's just um, none of these things were kind of addressed. And I started thinking about uh, what is the most important things in life? What are the three forms of kind of foundational forms of value in our lives? And of course, a lot of people might think, well, people will say, that it's their family, it's their health, and they'll kind of give lip service to a lot of these things. But it doesn't, oftentimes, it doesn't come through in their behavior. They're not able um, to really set the boundaries and make sure that they're prioritizing these things in their life. So what I saw actually, it's what the three foundational forms of value are is your time, attention, and your health. So it's like with those three foundational forms of value, you can turn those into anything you want. So it's like you can put time towards your relationships, and then you can have much better relationships. You can put time towards your career, and maybe you can make more money. Um, but what I saw was, we can give all of this health advice and relationship advice and life advice and stuff like that. But if people aren't able to set the boundaries that they need to set, to hyper prioritize these things, to actually make space in their life for to carry out these um, plans or these focuses, then it's never going to happen. So, in the hospital, I would see, um, you know, people's relationships hadn't been attended to. So then, there's this kind of infighting, even if, or sometimes the family wouldn't even come visit. And it's like, what is the situation there where, relationships haven't been prioritized in one's life, for example? Or one of the biggest ones is that people um, people will kind of hyper prioritize one area of their life, especially nurses and like helping professionals, stuff like this. I even saw this in people that are supposed to be helping with a person's life. They'll kind of prioritize just the career aspect of it, but then they'll use all these other kind of like unhealthy coping mechanisms in their lives, like like addiction is obviously really rampant in people's lives. They'll use shopping to cope, and then they'll get into these kinds of financial problems, and so it's like, what are people trying to drive their time and attention away from? So that's kind of what the first part of it is kind of getting clear about what is really going on in one's life and trying to address these issues early on. So I've been trying to look at, like, if you're in midlife and you can kind of look back on some of the choices that you make early on in life where you're more exploratory. Um, then you can start to kind of make a new kind of life path that is more conducive to making room for who you really are. Because if we don't do that, uh, you know, um, in my what I've seen is that that causes neuroticism. It causes all these kinds of psychological problems, and then people try to use unhealthy coping mechanisms in order to kind of deal with that repression of self. And that's not really addressed in the Western medical model. So I just felt like I was just putting a lot of, I just kind of putting a band-aid on bullet wounds, And so I really wanted to start working with people one-on-one to try to, so it's not just the psychological part, it's other things too. Like people have trouble uh, really putting plans in place, really understanding the time limitations.
Putting plans in place. That's me.
The biggest thing is time, understanding time. I feel like people have a really difficult um, time doing this. So, one of the first things that is part of the program is understanding. I do an age chart with people where you really so you look at your life expectancy, and this is hard for some people, but you look at your life expectancy and you say, and you clearly see how much time is actually left, and then we can start working backwards from there and say, like, do you really have time to take another trip to Vegas to cope, or do you really have time to uh, start doing this very expensive hobby? Like that's great. Like people have these things on their bucket list, but really the most important thing is to make sure that you understand the time limitations and not get caught up with kind of FOMO. You know,
Right.
um, yeah,
How would you, I mean, with or without a coach, how would someone be able to realize what their true selves or their essential selves are? How would they know?
yeah. So there's a few different, ways that people can come up or can try to do that. There are tools that you can use, just like the Myers-Briggs or the Enneagram, or even just things like sometimes I find it's even hard for people to identify whether they're an introvert or an extrovert. And because of our society, the way that it is with this kind of like hyper productivity and kind of shaming people into kind of driving themselves all the time, uh, it's important to understand that different people have different energy allowances, I guess. And that's not a limitation. It's just how we're wired. So it's like an introvert will need to design their lives in a certain way to be able to manage their energy. And sometimes I've seen people feel like ashamed of that, or um, they're just not able to set up proper boundaries so that they can, manage their energy needs well, or to have enough time for themselves, or to just manage that 24 hours and say, you know what, I need to time block areas of my day to be able to, do the things that are important to me. And so another aspect of the program is to look at these kind of super ego uh, um, messages, I guess, that we get from kind of our inner critic, from messages that we've gotten from our parents or the culture, and start to kind of unburden ourselves from trying to fit into these holes that don't really fit us.
Right. That definitely sounds like something that we should actually hire a coach or a therapist to work with, because it seems to me there's a lot of like involvement with shadow work, and it
Yeah.
can get difficult to be exposed to our, I guess, like our darker sides, our weaknesses, whatever it is that we've been trying to oppress, right?
Yeah, definitely. My belief is that a lot of what goes on internally tends to show up in our external lives. So, and the thing is like if that's not dealt with early on, when it's more manageable, when we have the time and the energy to be able to do that, when we have the cognitive ability to even do that, those things start to kind of spin out of control. Like what I've seen is that you can't outrun these things, right? They will always catch up to you. And, people try and try, but I've seen time over and over again that you just cannot. And so it's much better to go at your own pace, and kind of have more control over the situation and still instead of kind of letting these things kind of creep up on us.
Right. So, my understanding of what you've just said is that we're pretty much, while we still have the cognitive ability, then we still have the control to change our cognitive habit or behavioral habit. Is it something along that line?
It's some of it is cognitive and some of it's behavioral. I think a lot of it is like there's also repressed trauma that people, tends to be a real driver in people's approach to life. So, things can come up in people's lives like addiction or like compulsive shopping. And then with like, so for something like the compulsive shopping, that can really affect someone's financial life and then their ability to be able to deal with the burnout and stuff that they have from work, to be able to fulfill our creative potential. Because of course, if you have to work, 50 hours a week just to feed like a compulsive shopping habit to kind of drive down these traumas, then the creative potential, who you really are, the true self, can never really come out. So within each life, these things are very complicated. It's not just enough to say we can do our trauma work, we can try to recover from these various addictions that people have, we can try to kind of deal with these work problems. It's all interrelated, and that's what I'm trying to build a program where that's addressed. And it can be addressed at different levels. It's like people's recovery, or I kind of say sometimes like we're all trying to kind of recover from modern life. But like people's process can be uh, it's like an onion, right? It's like you can kind of strip back the first layer, and we can start dealing with the first layer. And as you gain more strength, as you kind of stabilize your internal self, you can start dealing with more and more. I've gone through this in my own life. When I was younger, I have a lot of trauma issues myself. I've had a difficult childhood. I had addictions that I had to deal with when I was younger. And so this has been a very long process for me over, the 20 years of my own personal life, and then working as a nurse and seeing other people kind of go through this. Um, and so, the program is really based on a lot of that experience.
I'm really, after what you've just told me, I have this fear of becoming, if I actually live to, say, they were saying what an average human being lives, what, 4,000 weeks, which roughly
Yeah.
equates, what, 76 years. If I get to live that long, I don't want to have like my shadows control my
Yeah.
behavior. So it's it's difficult to, so far it seems like for most people, right, most people have like, jobs and family. I'm just working, I'm working for myself. Well, if I need to, I can just go back and get a job, but I actually find myself on the other side, from those who actually work way too much and have no time for themselves. I actually find myself to have probably way too much time for myself. Do you think that can also be a problem?
It depends on what you're filling the time with. So it seems to be, I did watch a few of your videos actually on YouTube, and they're very wonderful.
Oh.
I really enjoyed them very much.
Yay.
I loved the idea of therapeutic content creation. And I think that's fantastic. I think that humans are made to be creative. We're all born with a creative streak, and however that manifests, for some people it's writing, for some people it's making videos, uh, for others it could be gardening or carpentry or working on one's vehicle. These can also be creative. Parenting can be creative. So I think that that's where the first part of the program, it's really, really important to identify. uh, so I just want to say that in our we have a kind of McDonaldization of culture where it's like it's one size fits all, and even self-help is kind of like that in a way as well. It's like, this productivity tool worked for me and it's going to change your life, and like, it might, and then it might not, and so there's everyone's life is very different.
Right.
So in the first part, the most important aspect of it is to get clear and to really understand who you are and what your needs are, right? So it's like, what are you interested in? What's your values? So there's a component of it is values clarification, really understanding what is the most important thing for you, because it's not the same for everyone. For myself, it's really, really important for me to make room in my life for writing and going in this kind of coaching direction where, it's more one-on-one counseling, rather than bedside nursing where it's more technical. I have 5 patients, these kinds of things. So I've made room in my life for that. Now, in order for me to do that, I have to take a financial hit, right? Because, up front, I can make more money as a bedside nurse. I mean, that's just a fact. But that's not so. When you go back to the 3 forms of value in life, there's time, attention, and health. Those are the 3 forms of value that are the most important. It's not cash, right? It's not, um, as long as you have, like in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as long as you have your physical needs and your security needs met, then you can really start looking at some of these other things in life. What I have found is, especially in North America, many of us have those needs met. But then there's this kind of like stagnation where it's like, well, what do we do with our lives then? And a lot of times it can end up, kind of going towards these addictive behaviors, or, just kind of going towards these kind of like un unmeaningful, hobbies people might want to just kind of randomly fill their lives with. But the program is about trying to identify what provides the most meaning for you, so that when you get to the end of your life and you know, you're in the hospital bed, and your nurse is kind of at the side of the bed, kind of taking care of you, uh, you know, if the question in your mind arises, am I happy with my life? Do I have regrets? Um, is the answer to that question, can we stack the deck so that the answer to that question, uh, there's more, there could be a higher probability that you can answer yes to that question. Now, of course, we can't control everything. We can't, but there are things that we can do to, you know, to lower the risk of there being a no to that question.
Right. So my understanding is that pretty much, at least for someone in my case, right, where I probably have way too much free time, it's to it's a better way to pass the time for me is actually focus on a hobby. I do like writing. It's one of my thing, like that, like you said earlier that you'll be writing. That's one of your values, that you're going to keep writing regularly, whatever. That's also one of the things that I'm doing also. But I don't know. It just, I feel like this is really difficult for me to say, but I feel like I'm trying out all these things because it's fun, right? But I'm still not. I feel like I can fill my days with these activities, whatever that I'm doing to build up my business, right? On some days, it just feels kind of pointless in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean I'm not really like facing the right direction. Like I've been searching all my life. I'm getting tired. Keep trying different things, right? So, do you ever run into people that has this problem?
So I think the most important thing would be to do that values clarification. Um, I guess I would want to delve into, uh, why are those feelings coming up? Why are those feelings of kind of meaninglessness? So it sounds like there's issues with meaninglessness. So a good way to kind of look at that is kind of look at your overall life and then your life trajectory and say like, you know, there's all, the kind of proverbial question of if I, could do anything in my life, what would it be?
I think a lot of it, I think most of it would be being more connected with other people and actually socialize more with me. It's not, I mean, I can fill my days up with doing stuff by myself. I'm so used to doing everything on my own. I'm tired of doing that. I think that's another value that I'm not really achieving yet. It's that social part.
Yeah.
Because a lot
So
of
you,
times, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Because a lot of times, say for writing, right, if we're not doing any activities, or if I'm not like going outside doing activities where either with someone or even with just other people around, it's just not as it's difficult to draw inspiration not having people around me. That's
Hmm.
how I
Hmm.
feel. So I mean, yes, I can draw inspiration from nature, but that's like a different kind, different sort of. Like, I have nature all I want here. All I need to do is go to the backyard, and then we have the woods. But I just need it's the socialization part, which I don't really hear about a lot. So, and for some odd reason, social media is not really helping that much. It was at the beginning, like yeah, I'm actually talking, like I'm talking to people, talking, but it's that face to face, actually carrying a conversation with someone. That's the part that I'm missing, or like having activities with someone that I'm missing.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I guess I kind of know what it is. It's just, I haven't found a way to fill that gap yet. I think this
Yeah.
is why I went into whatever I'm doing now, because I'm actually trying to connect with other people and trying to make myself useful for other people.
Yes. Yes, for sure. Absolutely. I feel like you're miles ahead of a lot of other people in the sense that, you know, it sounds like you've done a lot of thinking around this, that you've noticed that there is a gap in your life. And I mean, just by this conversation shows that you are actively trying to fill that gap.
But sometimes it
And
just feels, maybe it's just the day, maybe it's impossible to be like positive, like 100%. Maybe it just kind of dips sometimes. Today I realize my energy level is kind of low and caffeine doesn't really work. So I'm just kind of like, so,
right. So I guess what I would also look at is we would probably do some inner critic work
hmm.
because it sounds like there's some judgment coming through
Oh, yeah.
about, yeah. Yeah, just about accepting yourself in any state that you're in, right? Uh, so I think that everyone in the modern world, uh, or at any time maybe, has some kind of trauma. So because in the program there's the aspect, it's actually a module called kill the superego. So a lot of our inner critic stuff comes from the superego. Is we're supposed to be a certain way, we're supposed to be positive all the time, we're supposed to have all this energy, we're supposed to be able to, you know always be able to talk, wonderfully with another person and never say something stupid. And
Oh my God. So I'm saying stupid stuff all the time.
but that sounds like your inner critic. So I
Hmm.
think I would, so like I said, everyone is so unique. And so it would be like in the coaching, it's like through these conversations, these kind of flags kind of come up and say, okay, so the program is quite broad, but in your case, we would probably do some more inner critic work. And so when you were talking about killing the superego, we're talking about kind of staring that inner critic in the face and starting to do some work around developing a more loving psychological presence inside of you. So there's inner child work, you could do loving parent, developing that kind of loving parent, and someone that can say to you, that, Daria, it's okay for you to feel this way. It's like, for whatever reason, you're just not feeling energetic today, and that's totally fine. You can look at some of the things that you're already doing to fulfill this social need for yourself. So, you know, we're doing this interview, you're doing your YouTube videos, you're reaching out to people, and that is fantastic. And you deserve encouragement from, your internal loving parent to kind of drown out those inner critic messages that you've kind of imbibed all your life.
You're so right on. I don't know what to say. You're so right on. That's something that I've been trying to work on for like ever since I realized how I don't want to say bad, how like serious it is, but yeah, it's also it's quite, these inner critic voices are quite sneaky. Sometimes it happens without me even realizing, and sometimes I'm like, aha, you're being negative, sometimes it's just like, oh yeah, like it's been normalized. So yes, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
um let's see. Oh, there was another thing I wanted to ask you, because it's interesting you said that earlier, that you said most modern men are probably traumatized. So, so people that are, I mean, like, so are you trying to say that people back before the contemporary times, are you trying to say like the modern times as an industrialized age and onward? So people before the industrial age weren't as traumatized? Is that what you're saying?
I wouldn't say that. I think that it's hard to say. Like I'm a modern person, so I can't say I can't really speak to the psychological health of previous generations. I think that it depends also on what is going on in certain communities, because different communities are healthy. It's a continuum, right? In different communities. I would say that the Industrial Revolution has been very traumatizing. I think that we all have a collective trauma associated with the Industrial Revolution. I think that now, I don't want to say that, like, I'm not a Luddite type person. I'm not against technology. I'm not against progress, anything like that. I just think that for human beings, it seems to be, I think this is always the way it's been, because if you look at the wisdom traditions, like Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, these types of traditions, the human being has always had a difficult time finding the right path right through life. It's like Jesus talks about the narrow path. Sticking to the narrow path is very difficult. The Buddha talks about the noble truths, and these kinds of things, the eightfold path. So these things are very difficult for people. It's We need mentorship. We need community around these things. We need wise leaders in order to kind of help people um, be able to specifically identify what their particular path is, because it's different for everyone. So I think from the industrial revolution and on, there's been, like I said, a real kind of factory mentality that, like, everybody is the same. It's just one size kind of fits all, and that's not how life is. Each life is a very unique thing. Each person has a very unique path in life. Each person has a very unique uh, kind of call to. It's kind of like a call from the soul, to answer that call. And it's very hard, to find that out on our own. And the culture. has our current culture anyway doesn't always. It's almost like it has a mind of its own. It doesn't always have our particular values, you know, at the forefront. And there's always going to be a give and take between individual values and the collective. So that's just the way that human life is, and being able to be strong in our own values and try to get that mentorship where we can kind of figure out, kind of find that strong central grounding place in our own self. It does make it a lot easier to, kind of walk through life and figure out where you need to be going kind of on a daily basis. And a lot of it has to do with kind of getting away from a lot of the cultural messages that people get.
Which is kind of impossible with, all of us constantly sitting in front of a screen being, streamed. I mean, having content streamed into our minds.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a, um, that's getting worse and worse. And I do think that, human community, like true human community, is really important, where someone is allowing you to, uh, you know, be yourself, be in a safe psychological space. And I think, like, going back to the industrial or revolution kind of discussion, it's there's just been a lot of breakdown in our kind of our community and the family connections and stuff like that. And I think that we're really reeling from that.
Do you think we're actually hitting rock bottom about, what you have just said? Why it's like our human culture where we can't find we're having massive difficulty in finding our essential selves, and community's been breaking down over the past few decades or whatever. Do you like Are we actually hitting the rock bottom now? Because if it feels like um, apps like or platforms like school is picking up a lot of creators that have a certain amount of following. They're all going towards like membership and community building. So maybe in a sense we're actually bouncing off from the rock bottom,
Yeah,
even though internet sort of help us destroy a layer of ourselves. We're actually Some of us are actually using internet to rebuild communities.
definitely, definitely. So I think that that's another, like, okay, I think in life there's lots of different paths that one can take, and some of those paths are healthy. We can define health in a lot of different ways, but some of those paths are healthy, and some of them are not. And that's why we kind of have to get very clear about what our values are and what defines health for us, what makes us feel psychologically healthy. And I think that many of these communities online, I think it's really amazing. It's opening people up to being able to find people that can validate them, can validate their experience, and feel like they're being understood. Because many of us come from families that are very different from us. For whatever reason, I myself come from a family who I'm very different from them. So there's a lot of shaming that kind of comes along with that you
I
internalize
completely
growing
feel
up.
you on this. I'm very different from the rest of my family too, so it's
Yeah.
like yeah.
Yeah. So it can be very difficult for especially creative people to find their place in the world. So I think that the internet offers such a fantastic avenue for that, for finding that kind of community. On the other hand, obviously, we see people kind of going into unhealthy directions. So with community, there's more cult-like behavior, that we're seeing, where vulnerable people are taken advantage of in many ways. Um, so that's the thing. Like, I think that I am positive about the way, like the development, I guess, of where we're going. A lot of people aren't, but I do see a lot of positives and like freedom for individuation. I guess it's like that. It's like a Jungian term for maturing psychologically. But that's a very difficult thing to do, and it's really difficult to do that in isolation.
Right.
And yeah, so I think in that way, uh, you know, um, the internet does offer a much, or it offers a person the ability to kind of intuitively seek out people that they can feel have their best interest at heart. But I would say to be very careful
It's
about who you're, yeah,
it's like on one hand we need to work towards individualization, right? Is that the word, individualization? And on the other hand, we still want to we still want to establish and develop that community, that sense of community. It's like it's a balance, isn't it? And you don't want
absolutely.
to be absolutely individualistic and too authentic where you're scaring everybody off. I
Yes,
mean,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yes.
I think this is why I wanted to become a content creator. I think it's been like 3 years now, but I didn't know where to begin. That's just something I wanted to be, like work on, and then eventually, I opened a YouTube channel, and then I got on social media. I started writing all this stuff. It's just, I know I am a little scattered right now, but I'm trying. I feel like at the same time, this whole project that I've been working on with the whole content creation thing, which is just a small part of a bigger picture, right? It's one of the best ways I've found so far that I can use to discover or uncover who I am, if that makes sense. And I think a lot of people feel the same way to a lot of the creators that are on the internet.
100%. Absolutely. Yeah, and it's really, really important to give yourself the room to explore. And like, not enough, that's just not allowed so much in our culture. Like, it's very important. I feel like the message is, you know, you have to be productive at all hours of the day, whatever productive is supposed to mean in terms of like monetary value or these kinds of things. But that's why it's so important for us to clarify our own values, because the culture is like a juggernaut. Like, if unchecked, the culture will just, you know, it's like a tank moving through your consciousness all the time. So that's not just the kind of overculture, but it's also our parental cultures, our sibling cultures, our friends, whatever, right? So it's very important to do that work of getting very clear about who you are, what you need, and what your values are. And most people don't do that. And I can see that that leads to very, very like unhealthy and difficult consequences for people when they get to a certain age.
Oh my
And
God.
my
I'm nearly there now.
so like I, my whole kind of hope for contribution is that I can help people do that work before it's too late.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very compassionate work that you're doing. To save people. Well, I don't want to say save, but yeah, to help people to work on themselves where they don't have to be, I guess, disgusting before they die. Like, like just mean people. Is that what it boils down to? If we don't work on ourselves to a certain level, probably well into our old age, we're going to become just mean and grumpy and not happy, like miserable people, not nasty people, but miserable people.
Right.
We don't want to be like that. I don't want to be like that. I'm like
Right.
extremely terrified of that thought because I feel so bad sometimes. Like sometimes I'm just not in the mood, and I feel bad of not. It's that thing again, the internal critic. I feel bad about not being in the mood.
Right. Right.
So
Exactly. And then a part of that is understanding that, like, if you're it's so interesting the way people manage themselves sometimes, because and myself, and I totally include myself. Like, this is a program that I put myself through these paces, or at least I try to. And like, I am on a journey too. I'm learning too. And so when I'm in a mood, where I'm kind of like feeling depressed or something like this, like, I know that the best thing for me to do is to go for a walk, or to journal, or do these things that release that pressure without trying to project everything out, and like, I'm feeling this way, so I'm going to go like lash out, or something like this. This is it's so sad that in our cultures we're not given the time and the space to learn how to manage ourselves. We're not taught that in school. We're not taught that. It's like all of our life energy seems to be kind of focused on um, values that are not our own. That's what I see. Even me as a nurse, for example, uh, you know, the healthcare professions are riddled with terrible burnout, addiction, even suicide, where it's like, these helping professions, they're are professionals. They start out very compassionate, idealistic. They really want to help. They are service orientated people, and so they will drive themselves into the ground in order to meet these expectations. And in so doing, I have had this happen to myself, where it's like my own values of care and concern for my patients, I have to put those aside lots of times, because of the most important value is the efficiency of the hospital. It's not for my patients, really. Right. So then that is like a moral injury to me, as a person. So, you know, right now we're in a place in our culture where the most important thing is this productivity and efficiency. But, you know, there, so there's lots of times in my work even where I had to kind of go against, because I have these very strong kind of clarified values. I had to go against, what was being asked at the hospital level, and say, I'm sorry, but these, I can see I can see here that this is the most important thing for this patient. And so that's called, advocating for your patient, and all of that in nursing. But um, I wouldn't have been able to do that and I wouldn't have been able to step away from the bedside, even to say, what, I don't think, I have to get away from this, being there too much, because it's starting to be too much for me to be able to be, to manage that. I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't have this strong sense of what is important. Because the hospital, say that the hospital is like a kind of microcosm of the culture, the overculture, and I can see that my values, my goals are not the same as the hospital's goals. So somewhere along there, somewhere along, that interaction, it's me as an individual, and I am in negotiations with this hospital environment. Um, I can try to work that out, you know, um, and if I can work that out with that other in, some kind of productive way, then that's great. But if not, I, as an individual, and luckily in North America at least, we have lots of freedom, a lot more freedom than people actually think, to be able to make the choice and say, this isn't working for me. Like, I'm not able to have a voice in this situation. I feel that my values are being trampled on. And so then it's, it might take a long time. For me, it did. It took a while for me to, create a situation in my life where I could step away. But, it was important to me to be able to protect my integrity as a person. So these are difficult things. This life journey is not easy. And it's not easy to negotiate with other people in the world to say, these are my needs. I really need you to respect my needs. I can see that you have these needs. I want to contribute to those needs. But I can contribute this much, but in these other ways, I need to make sure that I'm caring for myself as well. So those boundaries need to be negotiated very carefully.
You just summed it up for me actually for about clarity and just between keeping your individuality and still being connected and know like know when to give and take, I guess. Um, I had a question. Let's see. What was it? Sorry, like, I'm just like so. I feel slow today. Like last week, I was like, "Yay!" I don't know. It's because like I know this is being recorded, so I'm just like being careful or what. But
It is a little nerve wracking
a little. I mean, like
to be recorded.
it shouldn't matter because it really shouldn't matter. Yeah. Oh, I meant to tell you. It's funny because do you think we all have different alter egos, like many different alter egos?
I do. So there's a type of theory called internal family systems theory.
Oh, I heard of it, but I don't know anything about it.
So this is really it's a very interesting theory, just about how we have these different kind of personalities, I guess, or parts. It's called parts in the theory. Um, that they each have different priorities, and some of you could even say that there could be different values that each of them have. So it's like even within a human's own psyche, there's that negotiation going on all the time,
Just within
right?
ourselves.
Exactly.
I
So
think yeah, this is the part that I'm so glad I remember to ask. Yes. Sorry.
oh, that's okay. Yeah. So one part of ourselves might want to be kind of dragged into this other direction, or they might have, you know, some other agenda, and then another part of ourselves will want to go in this direction and have a completely different agenda.
Yes. So what do you do? Like
Yeah, yeah.
what do
It
you
is
do?
very difficult. So I think that the important thing is to learn how to negotiate. I think negotiation is a very important thing, and communication, the ability to communicate um, with yourself and also with others. Because how I do feel like the way that the psyche is internally is how we tend to treat others as well.
Right.
So if we're kind of trying to dominate ourselves, the inner critic kind of is taking over, our psychology, then that's going to be directed outward, and that's going to create problems in our relationships. And so it is very important to kind of slow down enough to be able to hear what is the priority in the moment. So
Oh,
what part?
what is the
Yeah.
priority in the moment? Sorry, I had to repeat that just for myself.
Oh,
What is
that's
the
okay.
priority in the moment? That's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it is a process. It's like we're never going to get there. It's this life is a learning process right up until the end. And that's something that just needs to be accepted. And that also that life is not easy. Life is not meant to be easy, in my estimation. I don't believe that. I don't believe that we're here, for happiness and rainbows. I believe that now, there's a lot of different worldviews, and there's a lot of different cosmologies. I don't really settle on just on one or the other. I think that a lot of narratives can be very psychologically beneficial to people, and I think that that's whatever worldview you choose to adopt in terms of is there a God, is there not, what type of God, these kinds of things. I'm not really interested in saying like this is the truth.
Right.
What I'm more what I'm more interested in is whether or not it's you know the like that kind of narrative is psychologically healthy for you. right? Is it helping you adapt? Is it helping you be functional in your life? Um, so for me personally, I think that we are here to learn. In a way, you could say this is like a little kind of earth school or something. That's like for some reason, for I don't know what the reason is. Maybe I won't know until I cross over, until I die. But I have an intuition that the soul is here to want to learn, to explore. It's like we are kind of conduits for the cosmic consciousness, I guess, and that you know we need to slow down and listen to the messages that are coming through us and to what we need in the moment. So it's like we are both kind of both animals and both divine. The way that the wisdom traditions, the language that the wisdom traditions use. Sometimes that's the only good language we have.
Right. Sometimes I also find that a lot of the wisdom traditions are like the language is actually to me could be kind of vague. So I kind of like nowadays I'm leaning more towards like self development because it's not as vague. But then again, the self development crowd is very much into productivity, which I'm also into because I'm trying to get stuff done, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm thinking if I get to such and such goal, I can start having such and such not thing for me. Like literally, it's still about connection. So like it's like I'm literally just I'm trying to connect with people so bad.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I am not against productivity. I think that it's this. So there's like a toxic productivity, and there's a healthy productivity, and there's also goals that are very, very, very carefully chosen. So sometimes I do feel that like people will adopt goals that aren't actually important to them. Maybe they're important to their parents or something like that, or they'll adopt a goal that just kind of seems it's very random. I think sometimes people will approach life in a very random way. And for me, life is much, much more, I want to say, serious than that. But we also have to kind of leave ourselves open to the process of it unfolding and be playful about that. So it's I guess, again, it's like a negotiation of being serious about it, but also kind of more relaxed and playful about it. So that kind of goes back to, like the life isn't about happiness and rainbows. Like we need that discomfort. And when we're doing this kind of work, to be honest, I like there is a ton of discomfort that comes along with doing this kind of work, and a lot of emotional dysregulation can happen. Um, so it's like we need to make room for that in our lives and make sure that we're in a safe kind of environment for those processes to occur. So that would be also part of the program to make sure that that someone in the holistic kind of milieu of their lives are in a safe place to be able to peel back the next layer of that onion, right?
And that's beautiful.
Mhm.
Thank you for providing this safe space.
Thank you for having me.
Oh,
I have to say I'm not at my best today either, so I think some of my explanations might have been not as clear as I might have hoped, but
it will be okay. All right, so thank you again. Thank you for everything.
thank you so much for inviting me to do this. I really appreciate
No
it.
problem. Thank you for being my inaugural guest.
Thank you, Daria. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. I'll see you later.
Bye.